I'm almost 80 years old. That's the nexus for this whole series, is I'm just trying to get some of this stuff out. So there's somebody out here in the woods yelling, something's going on, at least having a record you can go back and at least look to and say, okay, what's this about? And even at my age, my truck is like 9-10 months old, and I've got over 50,000 on it now. I drive these roads. I know what safety is, and I know what everything is. And the absolute insane amount of speed traps going on. I went through one section of road yesterday that had 4 state police, 2 local police working a section of road. The one of them was after about 15-20 miles of 2-lane road that's got a high accident rate because of the markings and curves and the other problems. And when you get out just north of that section, you end up in a 4-lane divided road with you can't even see the opposing traffic. Straight road, not a single curve anywhere. And that's where they're enforcing the speed limit with state patrol officers hiding in the bushes. Yeah, that's all safety. There probably hasn't been a real accident on that section of road since I've never seen a real accident. I've seen a couple broken down vehicles, but not a real accident. But they work that every day with 2, 3, 4 vehicles. Then you go into the next section, another divided 4-lane road with not a single car on it, and there's 2 local police cars, and the speed limit there is 45. And again, that is probably the major source of income for that local court system in that area. Is imagine 6 police cars writing tickets where accidents for all causes are 0. And this is being played out across the country everywhere. You cannot reduce accidents. I don't care if you write 1,000,000 tickets, 1,000,000 times 0 is still 0. And they go out there every day, and this is their justification for their income in the local court. But as bad as these are, the new camera systems, they're making hold my beer moments for all this. The other video I was talking about earlier in Colorado, a small town in Colorado had set up a speed trap at the edge of town. And I went back after I talked about it and looked at the actual data. And it turns out the town is writing, it's upset because it's down from 1,000 to 500 tickets a day, a small 2-lane road. The approaching vehicles to town in a quarter mile are coming from a 65-mile-an-hour highway to a 35-mile-an-hour zone. And the local town had set an enforcement threshold above the 35 at the beginning of the 35 zone to 5 miles an hour. That's not safety. And the real irony of it is this is a high accident zone is what the justification is. And in the background of the camera is an accident on the opposite side of the road. Camera really stopped that one. And then you go to San Francisco. I was watching a newscast there. I think I mentioned this too. It was the on-ramp to a freeway, the Bay Bridge, where the traffic was doing 35, 40 as it was speeding up to go onto the bridge, and they were enforcing a 25 zone with photo enforcement. I ran into the same thing in Portland, Oregon. They had a residential street which split into 2 lanes. The left-hand lane was an on-ramp to the freeway. The right-hand lane was the 25 zone. And they were writing tickets for the people that were speeding up to go onto the freeway. There is no oversight on these. Every time you see one, there's an underlying gotcha that has no relationship to safety, and the local courts have no interest. The camera system in San Diego at the airport was writing $1 million a month from one intersection for the local courts. Not an accident 2 or 3 years before, not an accident after I put the cameras in. The only difference was the timing had changed, which caught more people out. These systems have no oversight, no reviews, no ability for the person who got a ticket to verify because they've eliminated due process on this type of ticket. And every place you go, you see the speed traps. In fact, I used to complain back a few years ago that the California Highway Patrol, not counting all the city or county police, were writing over 1 million tickets a year on speed limit signs that were never illegal, never followed any portion of the law to be posted. Then you had places like Barstow, which is a complete grade B movie of a speed trap town where the court is in on everything, the attorney's in on everything, the police officers lie. In fact, again, the California Highway Patrol have complete divisions of enforcement like Air Force, the airplane enforcement, which is clearly illegal in their speed trap law, but they've written something the officer testifies to in court to get around the law, even though when you watch what they're doing is a violation of the actual written law. California, in fact, one person on one data group told me at one point, California represented something like 50% of the fines. At one point, represented 50% of the fines for the whole country. In other words, that one state was writing as many tickets as the rest of the country combined. This is the criminal enterprise that had grown up around safety as the name. How can you have a speed limit 15, 20 miles an hour below an adjacent state where it's completely legal with no problems whatsoever? And then you have idiots like Washington State, who in their own traffic control manuals back a few years said roads with posted limits are no safer than roads without posted limits. Then go to freeway cameras on speed limits well below all their peers and saying it's a safety issue. When there's no evidence where they're putting these cameras up and what they're going to do, it's going to have any effect on safety whatsoever. And they've lowered the standard of adjudication, and now that we have no federal standard to check against to protect the rights of the people, to make sure the devices are set right or the speed limits are set right, now NHTSA has removed any protections whatsoever, even if they weren't honoring them, for a citizen to fight back against these criminal enterprises that have cropped up in any place in the country. They can afford to put up a camera system. In fact, that's an irony in itself, because the camera companies are making more money than the cities on this, and the city's just getting paid a commission on this revenue that's going off to these corporations that are in the pure business of finding ways to write tickets. This includes school bus cameras, speed zone cameras, 24-hour enforcement in the zone where there's no kids present. All this crap is going on because there's no standards to be followed, and there's no standards to be kept, and there's no standard enforcement whatsoever. And if you go to the Federal Highway Administration, outside of a few signs for commercial operations, you won't find a single enforcement on federal standards for compliance with federal law for decades. And I don't ever remember seeing one. They just turn a blind eye to whatever the local state's doing, and it's okay. Why? Because it advances their enterprise and not this criminal enterprise that is developed around the deep state, which every administration comes in and they hear the word National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, these are the good guys. No, they're no longer the good guys. They've been the bad guys. Again, I think they've killed more people than the Vietnam War, just in advancing poor practices, unsafe practices, and predatory practices. I don't even know how many people have been killed for pulling over the side of a road to get a ticket, or being severely injured in a traffic stop just to raise money, or in a situation like you got these new trophy cams for high-speed pursuits of, you got a 150 mile an hour car chasing a guy who was doing 10 over through traffic like a wild man on camera saying, what a good boy am I. This is all insane. It's got to come to a stop. We know how to get the data off of most of the new cars if they're in a particular zone. When I call 911 because of an incident, they know within feet of where the call came from. So I know that they know they can track a car or anything else if they really wanted to find out who it is. They don't have to risk everybody's life to do this. I'm not saying if not a bank robber or murderer, you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying to do normal traffic enforcement or to chase somebody down because they're homeless and don't have the money to have registration, you do a pit maneuver and roll the whole car over in the middle of a highway and throw all the person's personal belongings and what left of his life all over the roadway and destroy his only means of a home or a life is necessary.